our mission is planetary rescue, and it can only be accomplished with the wild, unbounded energy of celebratory abandon, which is infused with and tempered and calmed by love, truth, and knowledge of the shared origin of all. Extinction Rebellion is really good with the emotional and feeling side of things. And that's important because all of us need support and support for each other. The first parts of this programme, local group experiences of activism and arrest. So 3 members of this group will give their accounts of what it was like being part of their activism in London. And some of them are SDs, they will tell you what that was like as well.
I don't know, Roddy, if you want to just speak first of all. You were the first person in Southend to be arrested.
I was, that's right, yeah. I was arrested on Waterloo Bridge on the Tuesday. I'd gone up on the Monday and it was like a carnival, a festival atmosphere. It was just amazing, and you just thought, oh, I want more of this. One of the most amazing things about it was we was in the square, in Parliament Square on the Green, listening to people talk, and there was people singing, and it was just a lovely atmosphere. But suddenly, 5 roads were just cut off. The banners went up. People all gathered at these 5 roads. Just almost seemed to happen organically, and nothing moved for 5 days in Parliament Square. You know, it was just amazing. Those of us that were prepared to be arrested, it was quite clear that, you know, you sat down in the road. Those that didn't want to be arrested could be part of that, but move away at any time. And I'd only been there about an hour, and this copper came and said, you know, will you please leave the bridge? I said, no. He said, well, then I'm going to have to arrest you. I said, well, yeah, okay. And that was it, really. We went through the business and I got arrested. And there I was, banged up for 12 hours. They released me about midnight. And I thought, well, how am I going to get anywhere from Bromley in Kent at midnight? I said to the coppers, are there trains and buses? He said, no, I don't think so. Cheers. So I walked out thinking, well, I just don't know what I'm going to do here. But when I got outside the police station, there was 2 of our group, Sarah and Fiona. Oh, right, yeah, I've got to get on with it, sorry. So Sarah and Fiona had turned up. When I saw them, I thought they'd been arrested too, but no, they'd arrived there to pick me up and take me back to Southend. So I think that's just an indication of the support and solidarity that we have within the group. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I was the second person to be arrested from Southend. And I sat down by the boat when the police turned up and said, right, it's now time. A few days after I'd been there, we're going to clear the Oxford Circus. And I lay down to stop the police getting to the people who actually locked onto the boat. So I was ready to be arrested, sort of like first wave of arrest. And my experience was very good, surprisingly good. I just wrote an account and I thought maybe 50 people will see it. And I was astonished by what happened. It was liked 17,800 times. It was shared 6,500 times. And we received 4,500 comments. I just don't know what I'm going to do with 4,500 comments. I really don't. So this thing just went viral. I would reassure people that being arrested is nowhere near as bad as you might initially think it would be. Just read my account of what happened. And when I came out late at night, just before midnight, I was lucky. I was only in there for 5.5 hours. Steve was out there waiting for me. Steve can't be arrested because of his work. And that is an absolutely crucial role that you play. Because when I came out, I was pleased to see you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Well, there's loads of you. What I want to tell you about is the experience of being involved in the rebellion as a non-arrestable. As John said, I can't get arrested, I lose my job. And that didn't in any way detract from my experience of it, and I think my value to it. You know, we did a lot. We went along on the Sunday and met I don't know if you know, there were earth marches to Rebellion Week from all over the country, and we met a group that had walked from Cornwall and Wales and met up, and they were at Richmond, and we walked the last leg of them through to Hyde Park. Met people that had walked from all over the West Country, basically. I really felt I played my part. I waited for John. So you don't need to have to get arrested. In fact, they reckon for every person who gets arrested, you need sort of 10 doing all the other stuff. So that shouldn't put people off going and buying a coffee in the morning after my night shift with my badge on. And the guy went, "Oh, on the house, how's it going?" And just loads of little things like that happened. We might have done a bit of swarming and blocked a bridge at one point, and my job was to go along and sort of reassure the somewhat irate drivers on occasion that it was only for 7 minutes and why we were doing it. And probably half of them were really positive, which is, amazing if you think about it, that we're getting in the way of them getting home. And the other thing I think I want to say is about how it made me feel after having done it. Doing something lifts your spirit around it.
I was arrested for sitting down in the road with a group of other people. First of all, 2 people went and sat down in front of a police van that was trying to get away. We were trying to block anything moved that we thought might be about trying to let in a truck to tow the boat away. There are legal observers. Legal observers are really important. You'll find out more about that. Legal observers are there. They don't necessarily have to have any legal training, but they do get training of sorts on what to look out for and what to do. Take police officers' numbers. Make sure that they know who you are, the person that's getting arrested, and find out where you're being taken to, because all of that is necessary. I was kept in the full 24 hours. I was discharged. I was released pending further investigations. That's fairly common now. I'd expected to be charged. There wasn't any charge. And I must admit, that was a bit of a relief. I knew I had good legal support. We had really good legal support. You know the numbers to ring if you are arrested. So you'll find out more about that too. I won't go on about it now, but largely it's boredom. And if you've got something to do, to read, that helps a lot. If you walk around, I just walked around my cell a bit. I did some meditation, and I found that helped to pass the time. Right, thank you.
I wasn't going to speak at this bit, I'm going to speak a bit later, but I just didn't want you to think it was only the men, because there was twice, I was under the boat with John, and when the police were circling, and they said, "Those 2 aren't locked on," and John said, "Do you hear that?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, they're looking at you, Alicia," and they walked up and then switched and grabbed John, and he was arrested and I wasn't.
Yeah.
And then when Charlie was lying in the road in front of the police van, I ran as well, and I was picked up by the police. They gave me all the warnings. And for whatever reason, maybe the van was full, they picked me up and they said, "Do you realise, madam, how serious this is?" And I was like, yeah, we're going to arrest you, yeah. And then they picked me up and he goes, "Oh, let her go." What does a girl have to do around here to be arrested?
Right, okay, yeah, so I'm John Fuller. In fact, I was asked to just talk about the science related to climate change and the other great crisis that we've faced, biodiversity loss. A lot of people in the Extinction Rebellion talk in terms of the need for a declaration of climate emergency, but also a lot of people will say that we need a biodiversity and climate emergency. So what I thought I'd do today was just quickly run through the science, and so there's going to be some facts and figures and quotes. One key point, and that is that the media by and large has not told the public the full extent of the horror that we face. And it really is horror, and it is going to be frightening what I'm going to tell you. So you're going to have to bear with me, but at the end of it, I think we can all conclude that we're absolutely in the right place, because we do face extinction of a vast proportion of the life on this planet, and we have to do something about it. So to kick off with, if we're talking about climate change, one of the first things people often think about is sea level rise. And here, straight away, is a common misunderstanding. We've been burning fossil fuels for so long that we've put so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that concentrations of carbon dioxide have just soared over the last few decades, or last couple of centuries since the Industrial Revolution. And we now have 415 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. Now, looking back over millennia, the last time CO2 concentrations were that high were during the Pliocene era, 3 million years ago. Now, at that point, temperatures were 8 degrees Celsius warmer than they are today, and sea levels were 60 feet higher than they are today. Now, the point is that where we are now, That is where we're going. We're heading now to 60 feet of sea level rise if we turn off the CO2 tap tomorrow. That is the scale of the challenge that we actually face. We don't just have to turn off the CO2 tap, we actually have to row back and get CO2 out of the atmosphere as fast as we possibly can. Now, if you look on the Yale University website, there's a stack of information there from paleontologists about what's happened in years gone by, and millennia in the past. And they make the point that when the Earth, through natural cycles, has warmed very suddenly, in fact, sea level rise is very quick indeed. And they say that there's evidence in the past, during the Pliocene era, where sea levels were rising at a rate of 1 foot every 10 years, 1 foot every decade. Now, for humans, that is very difficult for us to adapt to, very difficult indeed. Now, scientists like James Hansen say that because we are still putting CO2 into the atmosphere, it could well be worse than that. We could perhaps be seeing a rise of perhaps up to 2 feet per decade. Now, it starts slowly. At the moment, sea levels are rising at 3 millimetres per year, but it's accelerating. If you look at the peer-reviewed science journal Nature, they're regularly providing reports. There's so much research going on around the globe about sea level rise, and one recent report said from Greenland, over the last 20 years, the rate of ice melt had quadrupled in 20 years. And from Antarctica, it had tripled in the last 5 years. So the point from scientists is, we're only at 3 millimetres per annum right now, but we are heading towards very rapid sea level rise indeed. Today there was an item of news from the Environment Agency, you may have seen it on the news today, about we are going to have to take some real shots. Humanity is going to have to take some real shots because we can't defend all the towns and villages that there are on the coast of the UK. Last year in November, Michael Gove said that he was obviously very concerned indeed about the research that was coming out. He said the Environment Agency will produce new predictions of what the UK has to face probably in the autumn of this year. So we'll get new predictions probably a little bit later this year of what we're going to have to contend with. Certainly, I think we're looking at least a metre this century. That could be an awful lot worse. But once, as I say, it starts, it's going to accelerate. Now, the other thing people tend to think in terms of about climate change is you get more extreme weather events, and that is most certainly the case. Because the oceans are heating up so much, warmer seas power hurricanes and cyclones. And warmer air temperatures, for every 1 degree Celsius of warming you get, air holds 7% more water. And we've already warmed the air temperatures by more than 1 degree Celsius. So rainfall is much more intense when it does come down. Now, during the 2017 hurricane season, which was particularly damaging in the Caribbean, Dominica was virtually every building on the island of Dominica was destroyed. A huge amount of damage done in Puerto Rico. Lots of countries, low-lying island states, were pummeled. But immediately after that, in September 2017, there was a UN General Assembly meeting, not reported at all in the British media. The Prime Minister of Dominica made a number of points. One was, please turn off the CO2 tap immediately. But one of his other points was, we have permanently altered the climate between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. And the Foreign Office Minister for Bahamas said that we are looking seriously now at the prospects of the evacuation of the entire Caribbean. So that is how much we've already altered the climate, close to the equator. That is how much we've already altered it, and that leaves us on track for pummeling all those low-lying island states and the eventual evacuation of them. If we carry on burning fossil fuels, putting CO2 into the atmosphere, it just gets worse and worse, and the change happens faster and faster. Just recently, Mozambique has been pummeled by 2 cyclones, Idai and then Kenneth. Now, close to 1,000 people were probably killed initially by those 2 terrible storms, unprecedented storms. And one of the crucial things about that is that we tend to think in terms of, 1,000 people have just been killed. The death toll is much, much higher and follows on from that, primarily from the increased spread of disease. The World Health Organization, the United Nations, do a lot of work around the increased spread of disease in our rapidly warming world. And a body called DARA International, a Spanish NGO, have done a lot of work on this. And they say at the moment, 400,000 people a year are killed by climate change. And of that number, 360,000 are people killed by the increased spread of disease. So you may think in terms of a terrible cyclone that pummels a country, but in fact it's the weeks afterwards when the death toll really does mount from spreading cholera and other diseases that are spread following a terrible cyclone. I mentioned in a very developed country like Puerto Rico, which was pummeled, and it lost its national grid for several months. Now, in a relatively wealthy country like that, initially 64 people, the government said, were killed by that terrible storm. But then a lot of media outlets there said, we're not sure that's right, because there seems to have been a spike in fatalities, more people going to hospital, etc., taken to hospital. And the government commissioned another study, and they found that, in fact, 64 people initially killed by the severity of the storms, trees landing on them, that kind of thing, roofs landing on people, buildings caving in. But 2,975 people were actually killed by the hurricane from all the follow-on effects of losing your national grid, not being able to get the medicines you need, not being able to transport goods, essential services around the country. 8% of the people left Costa Rica following that went off to America and probably will never come back. Those who left Dominica mostly came to Europe and probably will never go back. So just quickly now onto agricultural damage. A lot of people associate climate change with agricultural damage, but do people realise just how bad it's going to be? Again, if we think about Mozambique and what's just happened there, sure, we all understand that the current harvest has been pummeled, it's been flattened, flooded, it's done for. But also you lose all your seeds for the next season as well. So at the moment, we can probably, international aid, we can get seed to Mozambique and it can recover perhaps next year. It's a dreadfully indebted country now. They've had to borrow loads of money to try and keep their people alive. Now, probably agricultural damage is the thing that will probably hit us hardest over the next few decades. The IPCC, the body that advises all the governments of the world on climate change, says that we're on track for a 30% reduction in food production in many African nations by 2050. 30% reduction by 2050. And we're on current trends, agriculture will be virtually over in Chad, Niger and Zambia by the end of the century. And we are beginning the emptying of sub-Saharan Africa of humanity. People either move or they die. Now, this is obviously impacting the poorest countries of the world, but I also want to quickly mention the UK. We're not immune from this. The summer heat wave last year, the Royal Agricultural Society said that there'll be long-term consequences of that summer heat wave last year. Most crops were down by around about 20%. Potato crops were down, the yields were down about 30%. And then there was also the impact upon animal feed, which was also reduced. The farmers were going to have to dip into the stores that they thought that they were saving for winter in order to keep their animals alive. At the moment, countries can trade in food. But later on, in a few minutes, I'm going to come back to that when it suddenly will collapse. The trade in international food could collapse. So all of these pressures around the world collide. All the various different factors, sea level rise, agricultural damage, more increased storms. It means that millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people are going to have to move. Now, there's a study done by Cornell University in June 2017, peer-reviewed study, that showed that all of these pressures combining mean that we were likely to face 1.4 billion climate refugees by the year 2060, it's 40 years away, and by the end of the century, 2 billion climate refugees. I think that most of us understand that when we think in terms of climate change, quite often we'll think in terms of polar bears and loss of wildlife habitat due to a warming Arctic, and they could go extinct. I think a lot of people generally understand that. But I want to just mention that just a couple of reports. A few days ago, the United Nations published a report on biodiversity and the impacts upon human activities of the natural world. And they said that now 1 million species of wildlife are at risk of extinction. 1 million species, not 1 million individual animals, 1 million species. I'm just going to read a few points now, so please bear with me. That report said 3/4 of all land use has been turned into farm fields, covered in concrete, swallowed up by dam reservoirs, or otherwise significantly altered. 2/3 of the marine environment has also been changed by fish farms, shipping routes, subsea mines, and other projects. Only 3% of the world's oceans were described as free from human pressure. Fish are being exploited as never before, with 33% of fish stocks harvested at unsustainable levels. 3/4 of rivers and lakes are used for crop or livestock cultivation. The biomass of wild animals has fallen by 82%. During this time, the world's population has doubled since 1970. The global economy has grown fourfold. International trade has increased 10 times. As a result of all these pressures, 1 million species of wildlife are now at risk of extinction. On the 12th of February this year, the Institute of Public Policy Research published a report, got a fair bit of media attention, and that report was titled, "This is a Crisis, Facing Up to the Age of Environmental Breakdown." And we really are facing environmental breakdown. The IPPR report said, in the extreme, environmental breakdown could trigger catastrophic breakdown of human systems, driving a rapid process of runaway collapse in which economic, social and political shocks cascade through the globally linked system in much the same way as occurred in the wake of the global financial crisis of 2007-8. There are now other potential cascades. The paper warned of the vulnerability of food systems that rely on just 5 animals and 12 plant species to provide 75% of the world's nutrition. The lack of diversity weakens resilience to the growing risks of climate disruption, soil deterioration, pollution and pollinator loss. Previous research, cited by IPPR, estimates a 1 in 20 chance per decade of a simultaneous failure of both maize production in the United States and China, which provides 60% of the global supply. Let there be no doubt at all that we are right up against it now. Breakdown is beginning right now, on our watch, while we're here. And it's going to be catastrophic. It could be worse. I'm sorry to say that Steve mentioned something earlier. Some of you may be aware that there are some things that are not completely fully understood. The pace with which they will hit us is not completely understood. They're called the climate feedbacks. Things like methane being released from melting permafrost. You know, methane is 23 times more powerful than CO2 at warming the atmosphere. Now, we know that that process has started, but we don't know when it will overwhelm us. On the 10th of September last year, the United Nations General Secretary asked the media outlets of the world to tell everybody, allow him to pass his report onto everybody. Here in the UK, hardly anybody was allowed to hear it. And he said that we now really do face the prospect of runaway climate change. Things like massive amounts of methane being released that will just harm us and all wildlife. And he said this is, I quote, a direct existential threat. Now that is actually the task before us. This is what we face. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason why we're here tonight. This is unprecedented, and we have to rise to this challenge. We have no other choice.
Hello everybody, my name's Sarah Yap. I'm a holistic therapist. I'm going to follow my notes, I'm really sorry, but I will waffle, otherwise we will not thank me. I'd like to welcome every one of you here today. I'd like to welcome you, and 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 you. Because without you, we are nothing. We need everybody here right now. It's a big step for many of you, and we would like to honour you for coming along. For some of you, there might be some apprehension, some fear, maybe some feeling of deep sadness and grief at what you've heard Jonathan was just talking about. Maybe some of you have heard other things about what else is happening on the planet right now. Maybe you, like me, have experienced trauma or been struggling to get your voice heard about climate change for a long time. Maybe you've felt angry. So I want you to know that whatever you're feeling right now, you are welcome in that feeling. I'd like you to take a deep breath. And feel what you're feeling right now. Come into awareness of yourself in this very moment. And I'd like to invite those of you who feel comfortable to do so, to place your hand on your heart. And to gently close your eyes. And as you breathe, feel your heart beating. Come into awareness of your heart beating. Even if you can't actually feel your heart beating, feel what it feels like. Feel the vibration of your body. And start to come into awareness of every heart beating in this space. Now start to become aware of all the hearts beating on this whole planet. Start to become aware that we are many hearts beating together as one. Sending love and positivity into that one large, interconnected, beating heart. Now I'd like to invite you to relax your hand and to breathe normally and to open your eyes. And I'd like to invite you to look to each side of you and welcome the person next to you with a happy smile and a greeting of acknowledgement. There's a line in Bertolt Brecht's play Galileo. I don't know if any of you know this play, but it was written in the time of great change when right-wing fascism was really taking hold of the whole planet. One of the sayings, one of the pieces reads, "Unhappy is the land that needs a hero." And I think we're witnessing now an unhappy land, but we're needing many, many heroes. But we're heroes of the heart. We win this war through love, through interconnection. Each and every one of us has actually got an answer, or part of the answer, to this puzzle inside of us. And together we solve the puzzle. So if you feel called to join Extinction Rebellion today, you need to know that you are welcome, and you will be welcomed and supported to learn and to grow, to understand your part, to grow your part in this movement. And maybe, like me, you will start to heal yourself of many emotional wounds by engaging and being accepted. So thank you so much for being here today, and thank you so much for listening.